Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Y: The Last Man. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I thought it was so interesting that we are starting 3 weeks into the future to an extent. It's been 3 weeks since everything went down. And I thought that's so interesting because it's a little into the future, but not too far, in advance of like in the aftermath of all of this. It's not like, oh, we're dealing with a year or two later. It's no, at least at that point, which we can assume might be where the story kind of picks up, is after that 3 week mark, which is, like I said, an interesting point. And just to see the state of everything, granted, considering what the virus is all about, what the notion of this show is, well, the series is, it makes sense for the city to look the way it does. We even see a crashed plane and stuff like that, because it's everything would kind of fall apart like that, consider everything. But we don't, obviously we get those couple blocks we see. We don't get to see the grand scheme of things at that point in time. We only just get to see those couple blocks. Obviously the cars all being stationary like they are. There's even a plane crash, which in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense considering the circumstances. But also that sky view kind of shows us the intersection being a Y. But that scene also, I felt kind of stupid never really piecing this together until, Yorick had written out that sign saying, "Beth, I'm still alive, come home, why?" And I was like, oh, right, Y: The Last Man. Because I went into this already knowing his name was Yorick. Obviously, they even say it in the trailer, but I didn't correlate that until, I saw his name. Because obviously, I just took the Y as in, Y: The Last Man, because, Y as in the Y chromosome, which is applicable in this case, but also Y as in Yorick being the last man. So that fits probably more so with the title, but it can also have the double meaning of the Y chromosome, but it's probably more so specifically about Yorick because he is the Y as in Yorick, the last man. So there's layers to that, which, I got the first layer, just not the second one. But regardless, I do appreciate, though, when we rewind time, it's not this was 40 days earlier or something. It's no, we get the day before everything went wrong, and we get introduced to everybody's life. You find out about Yorick, him being someone studying magic, his sister Hero, who's kind of going through, because she was in a class or something, and I was wondering what that was about. It's right, not a class, but I knew it was an AA thing. I thought maybe she was addicted to drugs, but it seems like she got a DUI, so she had no choice but to attend that. So we got introduced to that, even finding out that I didn't know Diane Lane's character Jennifer was their mom. I thought those I didn't know Yorick had any correlation there. I thought it was just gonna be that's happening there on the government level, because it's meant to give you the perspective of the street level of just kind of everyday people and the government level. But I didn't know obviously I didn't know, for one, because Hero's in the trailer, but I didn't know she was his sister, but also that they're Diane Lane's character of Jennifer, I didn't know that was their mom. So that presented a really interesting thing. But we kind of get an intersection of what I'm assuming are our main characters. So we see these different facets from the governmental side to the lower side things. For example, everything with Hero. Apparently she's having an affair with a married guy. Interesting enough, it's the actor who played Weston in the Republic of Sarah. He had obviously made these promises of right, I finally told my wife the truth. She was, she understood because our marriage wasn't in a good place for a while now. So she was just kind of very accepting of it, as he was saying. But granted, that turned out to be a bold-faced lie as she read his text messages, which I love that he had went outside and saw the dog, and he came back and be that dog was with, your wife just texted you when you're coming home, bring some diapers. Obviously, he's well, I want to tell her, but I can't. There's a lot. We have a kid together and everything. She's just I'm done. And it ends in a scuffle between both of them. I thought what was going to happen is at the moment, he's going to die. But it's because we seen it in a trailer. I just assumed it was this. I didn't realize she had attacked him. And kind of a self-defense, but also she was just angry throwing stuff. And she accidentally killed him. I was oh. And part of me is well, she's actually lucky. She kind of killed him at the perfect time in a messed up way. That's gotta be mind-meldingly messed up if right, you accidentally killed this guy. For one, it's someone you care about, but also you accidentally killed him. Two, then you find out like the world is basically ending around you. Like I'm gonna jump back to everything else, but it's like her moment in particular. I'm like, that's got to be. I mean, there's got to, the twisted part is there's probably got to be some form of relief, being like, right, and eventually they're going to realize, because at the time they haven't figured it out. Obviously, it's early days, but it's like, right, it's only men that have died, so I don't have to worry about it. Granted, his wife is going to come looking for him, but then it's going to be like, your husband. I don't know, because then you have to start thinking about, like, would someone come tracking him down? Like, her fingerprints are all over that. I mean, they did work together, so it wouldn't be too much, but there are people around to, like, investigate that, look for her husband for, like, his wife, but it's like, they probably all just chalk it up to, your husband's dead somewhere because of this. I mean, she'll probably think, like, maybe he's alive in some shape or form, because then it starts becoming, like, is it all the men? Maybe some men survive. Like, they have to, like, really take count and see, like, how severe this situation is. So that's one side of things that's definitely going to be interesting going forward. Obviously, there's the whole Yorick situation of, like, him kind of being kind of like the son that kind of stumbles and falls a lot in the grand scheme of life, because he bought, or at least got a ring for his girlfriend, which, an engagement ring, which his sister was like, don't do that. Beth is amazing. She's awesome. But the fact of the matter is, you don't even have enough money for a ring, and you're literally here asking me for money for wine and cheese so, like, you can propose to her. But it's like, I don't think that's a good idea. You haven't even figured your life out yet. And he's like, I've got it, And he's the type of guy, I think, that kind of, like, is very, like, laissez-faire about life. Like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to figure it out. Which I can relate to in some regards. But also, it's like, right, like, I think it was also that thing of, like, love is going to find our way through this. So, like, he ends up, because he wants to go to Australia with her. She's like, no, you got your magic show and stuff. Like, he's like, no. I can do that anywhere. And hands her the ring. And he's like, please, like, just marry me. And she's like, well, what are you going to do? And then for him, it's like, he feels a little attacked, because it's like, wait, you're just poking holes in everything. It's like, right, she has the right to question, like, well, what are you going to do? You're just going to be my magical fiance, like, waiting for me at home? Like, what? Like, it's like a last minute thing. He's throwing it out there, but also, like, you're also, like, asking her to, so last minute of, like, yeah, what if I go with you and stuff like that? It's like a pretty big decision that you're kind of throwing at her all at once. Give her time to really process all of it. But, in the fast pacing of the conversation, she's kind of like, right, like, I don't want you to hold me back, which I'm like, yeah, I don't think you wanted to say that. That was kind of, because, like, it seemed like you were very supportive and everything, and then in this moment where he's like, oh, I want to tag along with you to Australia, it's like, well, I don't want you to, like, hold me back. And he's like, well, hold you back? And she's like, yeah, I want to, from meeting people. And I'm like, she could have handled that a little. They both could have handled that well. For one, just spring it up on her, like, because they always say that about, like, proposing to someone. You already know, like, you should never go into a proposal. I mean, that's also the thing, like, Yorick might have deluded himself enough to be like, no, it's going to be fine. She's going to say yes. Like, why would she say no? It's like, I think you'll get enough of a vibe knowing whether or not your significant other is ready for you to pop the question for them or not. I feel like it. I mean, I've never gotten to that stage, so who am I? It's not like I'm talking from personal experience, which is just like, the moment he pulled out the ring, I was like, oh, this ain't going to go right. This ain't going to go good at all. It's like, ooh, that's sad. Especially when you consider, like, the message of, like, Beth, I'm alive, come home. But it's like, you can make the argument, like, right, she was away at the time, and he just wants her to know, like, hey, I'm all right. Even though it seems like all the men are dead, like, I'm fine, so come home. So there's that. I felt the moment he pulled the ring out, I was like, oh, this isn't going to go good at all. And it didn't. And it kind of turned to him yelling at her a little bit for everything. And it's just kind of like, I picked up your dry cleaning, I packed all your stuff. And then, like, you're like saying, like, I'm going to hold you back from meeting people. She's like, I didn't ask you to do all this stuff. He's like, I know. He's just like, I love you. She's like, I love you too. But just like, I need time away from you right now. It's like, that all went sideways. Obviously, like, I didn't even talk about it, like, the monkey. I'm so excited about that, because I know, I've never read the graphic novel or comic book, but I do know about, obviously, like, his companion throughout a lot of the story is his monkey pal, which I love that he, it's like, oh, it brought him a pin at the beginning, he gave it a cracker, he even saved it from a falling helicopter, but yeah, what was it, Ampersand, I think it's its name, so that was pretty dope. So, but I mean, the monkey thing, what happened between him and Beth was super not dope. That's kind of like that sucks. And since I did bring up his mom, it is interesting. Like, she's a congresswoman. She's kind of got beef with the president, which you can immediately see, like, because the comic book was written, like, in 2008, I believe. So I'm like, I wonder how much of this did they rework for present day, just because she's just, like, calling out the president for, like, oh, yeah, like, your supporters. Like, did denounce a lot of his supporters, and, like, yeah, like, because she made comparisons to, like, the KKK and stuff like that, because I guess she's kind of like, God, what would that job be considered? I guess she's like the one that kind of handles a lot of like the public speaking stuff for on behalf of the president. Marin Ireland, which, you know, I've seen her in a multitude of things. I want to say the most recent thing I saw her in was season 2 of The Umbrella Academy. Might be it, but I know her from like that, Sneaky Pete. Like, she's been in a multitude of things. But like, obviously, like, Jennifer, like, called out the president and stuff like that, which is like, I think that's so true to life of, like, how politics has become like that. It's very, like, high schoolish in that, like, oh, you're talking shit about someone behind their back, but, you know, now on a, like, public forum and stuff like that, calling people out. And so it's like, because even he's like, yo, we used to be tight and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, you didn't get the job you want. He's like, yeah, I was pulling for you. He's like, there were other voices in the room. And she's like, yeah, whatever. But she's like, yeah, no, we can go back to being friends and working together in 2.5 years when I go running for president. So it's like, that beef is so interesting. And for it to be on such a public stage, you would think as politicians, you do a good job of lying and kind of covering that up. Side note, like, is this the first, like, TV? I get caught up in it sometimes, but like, is this the first TV show Diane Lane's ever done? Like, maybe there's stuff in her older filmography. I don't know her entire filmography, but I'm still, like, wondering, like, because I recently had this conversation about Adrian Brody, because he's in the show Chapel 8, and I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen him in a TV show before. Maybe he has done something, but it's like, not like, once again, it's not like that's a conversation of like, oh, you're on TV now, that's it. But it's just kind of those things of like, holy crap, I never realized, like, until now. It's like, it's not until she popped, because I already knew she was in the show, but it just sitting there thinking about, it's like, right, I don't think I've ever seen you in a TV show before. You know, like, once again, those lines have blurred so much because of streaming and stuff like that, too. So it's like, it's not, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's not like Hollywood standard-wise, like, doing TV is not looked down upon like it once upon a time was, you know? So it's one of the things of like, holy crap. I mean, get to see more of Diane Lane in something, I'm always going to be down for that, rather than just like a 2-hour movie that's kind of a one and done in regards, like, get to see the progression of a character over the course of episodes, getting more time with characters. Like, once again, I always prefer TV shows over movies structurally anyway, storytelling wise. That's always kind of my favorite medium is TV shows. But which, even speaking, like, not just her beef with like the president, on a personal level, she's got whatever it is with her husband, and it's like, she's like, I can forgive you. So I'm like, did he cheat or something? But the way he was kind of hesitant, like, he was like, no, you have every right to be mad at me, like, I've got a place, like, you don't have to like set up the guest house or anything for me. And I'm like, she's kind of like, right, you've punished yourself enough, I've punished you enough, like, she wants to make this work. But the moment, like, he was kind of hesitant, I was like, is he going to say, like, sorry, Jennifer, but I met someone? I thought that's where it was going to go. But it's also, like, that political thing of, like, right, like, we'll wait till after the midterms because, you know, you want to present the whole, like, oh, united front. Like, you going through a divorce at the time is going to, like, it shouldn't matter, but it's going to matter for public reception because it's like, right, like, people subconsciously won't realize, like, that type of information will matter in how they vote. It's like, right, regardless of your stances and whether they agree with you, it's still going to be like, oh, she's divorced though. Like, I'm sure for certain people, it's like, oh, that kind of goes against their values and stuff like that. Regardless, it kind of makes you go like, oh, if your home life is so unstable, what does that mean for your political life? Or what does that mean you will do for us as a congresswoman eventually going to be running for president? So, like, a lot of those conversations will probably come up. But he wants to, like, make sure that she gets it, you know, because I think it's like a re-election thing. That's why he was saying, like, the midterms and stuff. So that was interesting, especially when you hard cut to, like, immediately after that, like, the president is gushing over his wife there with his daughter, as well as, like, one of her children, their grandchildren. So it's like, that's a, you know, that's got a cup super, super deep in that regard. So that was fascinating. But we also got introduced to our other main protagonist, who I think is interesting, pulling a little bit of a banshee here, that you actually don't know her real name. Because when we get introduced to her, and at first I was like, whoa, are you building a bomb? I was like, wait, I thought you were like a secret agent or something like that. I was like, are you a what? I thought you were secret. Oh, you were helping like a domestic terrorist group so you can take them out. But it's not like, I thought you were going to like wait for the cavalry to show up to arrest him. It's like, oh no, the thing we saw in the trailer where you were jogging away and a house blew up, you were killing. Wow. So it turns out like, so you're not just like, she's got to be CIA. She's got to be like a CIA hitter or something like that. Because, you know, the hush hush, like, no names and stuff like that, it seems like that's probably like the CIA doing something they shouldn't be doing, and that's operations domestically. So that's interesting, because like later on the president heard about it, or was it yeah, I think the president heard about it, but it's kind of like, right, it was just a whole bunch of domestic terrorists, and it looks like they blew themselves up. Obviously, it's meant to look like that, so. But yeah, like, she doesn't actually have a name, because I was like to say, it's Jada her name? He was like, no, because she gets the new identity of Sarah. She's meant to be on the president's detail. Like, she's supposed to be Secret Service, and the fact that, once again, that shows you like the government pool, that they can give her a fake identity to show up and be like, oh, you're a Secret Service agent named Sarah, just like that, because that was literally the next day, like next morning, she showed up for duty in her job. It's like, right, like, because there's a credible threat against the president, which we'll potentially get to. Well, go ahead and talk about it. Like, it seems like that would have something to do with it, because I've heard from someone, I won't talk about it, about the circumstances of why this happened the way it did, like what's behind it. I've heard like what it is in the comic. I'm curious how much they're going to, because the question the person was asking was like, it was someone who was familiar with the comic. They were saying, I'm curious how much of that's going to stay the same. Just if it is the same, I won't say anything just so I don't spoil it for anyone who's never read the comic book. But I'm curious, like, once again, this was written a couple years ago, like over a decade ago. This was written, because I don't remember when it ended though. But it's like, I don't, like, who knew, because he was, the person in particular was like, I don't know how much, whether they're going to change that or keep it the same for the show or not. So that's going to be interesting. So like, for now, I'll keep quiet about what I remember hearing about, like, who is responsible and kind of like the reasonings for that. But it kind of ties into like what gets brought up in conversation at point with this whole thing about like there being a credible threat to the president. It seems like it, you know, it ties into that whole element of from the comic. So I'm curious. What was interesting too is that we see like when she was running, like getting towards the car, she noticed like a dead deer with blood on her eyes. I was like, okay, I was like, that makes sense. Of course, it wouldn't just go from humans to animals. It would start with animals, because that's typically how most viruses and plagues start, because that's how the Black Plague like spread the way it did, was because of rats. So like, of course, like it would start with the animals, because they were the ones that would affect it first, and then and eventually, because we see it over the course of the, like we see it like when Kimberly is in her room with her husband and her children, like two of her kids find dead rats, and you're like, whoa, and it's like the whole blood thing again, and so you start pulling back. And, like, Christine at one point in time, like, after the president, the congresswoman, Jennifer told her to kind of go get her nails fixed, because it's like, right, you don't want any kind of imperfections, because, like, the littlest thing, like, Jennifer's already kind of, like, for the past 20 years, people have just kind of used any opportunity to attack her. Like, you don't want to give them, like, even more ammunition. Once again, it's the smallest things that can still be used just to kind of like discredit her, look down upon her, like, oh, like your staff is looking shabby or some crap like that. I kept wondering why the actress who played her looked so familiar. I think I know what I know her from. The Good Place. I think she played one of Eleanor's kind of scummy buddies. I think that's who that is. Like, remember, like, they screwed over that other roommate of theirs and they had t-shirts made of it and everything, and she was the one kind of all about that idea. Like, I believe that she was always the one that kind of played into, like, Eleanor's worst nature. Like, that friend, I think that's her, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, first, like, the horse running by, and then the hordes of rats. It's like, okay, didn't know Ratcatcher 2 was around here. But, yeah, I was like, oh, that's weird and disturbing. But then you also see, like, some of the rats had died, so... And I think that's such a fascinating thing about this situation, too. It wasn't, like, an all-at-once thing. Different people got hit at different points in times. Like, for example, Nora ended up, like, you know, her husband... Because when I found out she had a daughter, I'm like, okay, there's some sigh of relief. I know from the trailer she had, you know, like, the scene happens, like, she removes the bed sheets and finds something. I didn't realize she was going to find not just only her husband, but her son as well. I thought she had both. I thought it was going to be like, oh, she has two boys and lost them. It's like, to a certain extent, she lost her husband and her son like that. And obviously she's telling her daughter, don't come into the room. I was like, regardless if you haven't lost your entire family. Because it kind of reminds me of like The Leftovers. I still need to circle back to this show. I've only seen the entirety of season 1. I think I saw a fraction of season 2. But it's kind of that thing of like, right, like when some people are in the case of like them being the only people left when their entire family got like, some people taken. Other people had their entire family taken. So it's kind of something of that facet where it's like, yeah, she still has her daughter, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that you lost like half your family, you know, so... And that was kind of an interesting development. But because it seems like this initially started with like news coming out of Israel that like the president got news like, right, there's like a mass casualty going on. And it's like, yeah, we lost contact with Israel, couldn't get back with anyone. It's like, what's up with that? And then the president gets struck. And then immediately it ripples out towards everyone else. Because like I said, it wasn't like an immediate all at once. It was a progress because like at some point in time, Nora's husband and son died maybe in like the middle of the night, because it's like, right, apparently like he came to sleep in their room like 4 o'clock in the morning, so he was their son was at least alive. Then you'd assume like the husband was as well, but at some point after that they died. There's that cop that was looking for the missing ambulance that Hero was in, and he came knocking, and then he immediately drops dead afterwards. And then slowly but surely we start rippling and seeing like it starts like, I think, picking up pace where like maybe it has some time period of dormancy before it fully activates. Like maybe it has to stay in someone's system like 24 hours before it fully activates. And so after that is when it starts really hitting, where it's like everyone starts dying at once. The airplane crashing, the woman screaming out like, my boy, my boy. There's that little girl that's in the car, like it stops. She's staring out the window. Her dad is dead beside her. I'm like, this is super, like you knew what it was going to be, but like being there in the forefront of it, seeing all that death and mayhem. And then once again, it's just like Hero getting hit with it all at once of like, right, I did what I did, but now like all of this is happening. What's going on? And so that meeting of all like the high level people. Side note, I think one of the military people in there was the actress who played, I'm blanking on the character's name, but she was one of the, she was from the church in Hellstrom. I think, I could be mistaken. I think she was one of them. She was the older lady that had ties to Damien and Anna, if I remember correctly. But regardless, to have that all happen at once and just like everyone's like freaking out because like what's going on. Christine's panicking because like blood is all over her. Like there was even one of Jennifer's people like stripping off her clothes because it's like no one knows what is happening. Like, you know, is it a weapon? Is it an attack? And Jennifer's trying to keep like Christine calm and everything. So it's like the entire world is falling apart. And then we cut to Yorick. Interestingly enough, and I think it speaks volumes that like, right, Yorick and ever since we're like fine, because once again it's like we've seen that it's been affecting all the animals, at the very least the male animals, as someone kind of informed me before the show aired, because that was a question I had like from the trailer, and someone that's like, right, Dad, right, the graphic novel kind of gave me a little bit insight in just like the scope of everything. But it is kind of like the crazy thing of like, right, here's all the chaos, hard cut to him waking up because his monkey's throwing food at him, and it's like, right, you don't realize what's going on, you're trying to contact Beth, it's like, what's up with that? And you hear the screams and the pop, everything popping off outside, and it's like, whoa. Like, it's a little Walking Dead-ish in the sense that, like, Rick woke up in a hospital and everything had already gone to crap. To be fair, everything's already falling apart around Yorick. Because I figured as much, this wasn't just, like, an American thing. I figured this was, like, an entire, like, no, this is, like, the entire world situation. So, it seems like it had its main purpose, but then I think things kind of went and spiraled way out of control, at the very least. So that's an interesting and very depressing start. Like I said, it seems like we're going to be at least a little bit into the meats and potatoes of it. Like I said, I think we're going to start off by living in that 3-week period afterwards. I still would like, hopefully the next 2 episodes will kind of give us some like time in that, like that we are, because I think from based on what we saw in the trailer that we will be dealing with some of those still early days. It's like, oh, this is the next day, but it's crazy like how much can change. Probably not even into 24 hours, probably less than 24 hours, because it was probably like the middle of the day when it's like, oh, the day, well, it says like the day before, but then it was like the morning of. So like that all went down, like started at the very least in the morning, like who knows if it was in the afternoon when it finished or whatever the case may be, but like in just such a short amount of like time, like it just took that long for the apocalypse to kind of like pop off essentially. And once again, it seems like worldwide in fact, so. But once again, we don't know how long things were simmering before then, because like this could have all been dormant like weeks in advance. This could have all been set in motion like weeks in advance, and it's only in this one day where it all completely pops. So, you know, we only have that frame of context with this. But yeah, I'm excited to see where everything takes us. The series premiere was the first 3 episodes released, so I am watching these one at a time, but I will be like dropping my reviews all at once. So these should go up like 15 minutes from each other, so do keep that in mind if you're listening to this. The other 2 episodes should be either already up or on their way to being up, so do keep that in mind. But like I said, I'm very excited. I mean, just to continue down this the route of this show, but just in general, just to see like what happens next in the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.